The books of the Maccabees, primarily 1 and 2 Maccabees, were not actually banned, but were left out of the Hebrew Bible and some Protestant Bibles, leading to confusion and speculation around their exclusion. These books, which focus on the Maccabean revolt, 2nd century BCE, against the Seleucid Empire and the miraculous events associated with Hanukkah, have different historical and theological importance depending on religious tradition. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. The books of the Maccabees, especially 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees, hold significant historical and theological interest, yet their inclusion in some canons and exclusion from others has sparked debate, misunderstandings, and a sense of forbidden status in some circles. These texts chronicle the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire in the 2nd century BCE and the establishment of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. To understand why the books of the Maccabees were not universally accepted into all biblical canons, we need to explore their historical, theological, and cultural contexts and examine how various religious traditions viewed their content. Historical background of the Maccabean books. The books of the Maccabees center around a tumultuous period in Jewish history when Judea, under Seleucid rule, faced intense Hellenistic influence that often clashed with Jewish religious practices. This tension escalated under the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who imposed harsh decrees that forbade Jewish religious observances, desecrated the Jerusalem temple, and enforced the worship of Greek gods. These oppressive measures led to the Maccabean revolt, a grassroots Jewish resistance led by the priest Mattathias and his sons, particularly Judas Maccabeus. The revolt succeeded in reclaiming and rededicating the temple, an event celebrated during Hanukkah. The accounts in 1 and 2 Maccabees describe the courage, faith, and resilience of the Jewish people in fighting to preserve their religious identity and practices against Hellenistic assimilation and persecution. 1 Maccabees is a straightforward historical account of the revolt and its military campaigns, while 2 Maccabees offers a more theological narrative, emphasizing themes of martyrdom, resurrection, and divine intervention. The canonical status of the Maccabean books. 1. Inclusion in the Catholic and Orthodox canons. The books of the Maccabees are part of the Old Testament canon in the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. They are categorized as deuterocanonical texts, meaning second canon, which indicates their acceptance in the canon but with a different historical process than the books of the Hebrew Bible. Early Christians regarded the Maccabean books as spiritually edifying and valuable historical records. Many early church fathers, such as Augustine, accepted these texts as scripture, and they were eventually included in the Latin Vulgate, the Catholic Church's official Bible. 2. Exclusion from the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, does not include the books of the Maccabees. Jewish religious leaders compiled the canon of the Hebrew Bible between the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, likely at the Council of Jamnia. At this time, they established a canon based on several criteria, such as Hebrew authorship and alignment with the Torah's teachings. The Maccabean books, however, were written primarily in Greek and were associated with events after the period covered in the Hebrew canon. These books did not match the thematic or linguistic framework that was prioritized in the formation of the Hebrew Bible, leading to their exclusion. Additionally, the Maccabean period's association with Hasmonean rulers, who had complex relationships with Jewish religious authorities, may have contributed to these books' marginalization in Jewish tradition. 3. Protestant Reformation and the Apocrypha. The Protestant Reformation in the 16th century led to further reassessment of the biblical canon. Reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin questioned the canonicity of several books, including the books of the Maccabees, on the grounds that they were not part of the Hebrew Bible. As a result, most Protestant Bibles exclude the Maccabean books, categorizing them as part of the Apocrypha, a term meaning hidden or non-canonical. The decision was based on the idea that only texts recognized by Jewish authorities should form the Old Testament. Despite their exclusion from the Protestant canon, the Maccabean books were often included in a separate section labeled Apocrypha in Protestant Bibles up until the 19th century. They were valued as historical texts but not viewed as divinely inspired scripture. Reasons for exclusion and controversy. While the Maccabean books were not banned, various factors contributed to their ambiguous canonical status. giving rise to notions that they contain forbidden knowledge. Here are some key reasons for their exclusion and the surrounding controversy. 1. Language and cultural barriers. The books of the Maccabees were primarily written in Greek, a language not traditionally associated with Jewish scripture. This Hellenistic cultural influence set them apart from most other Old Testament texts, which were written in Hebrew or Aramaic. The Greek language and style of the Maccabean books reflected the surrounding Hellenistic culture, leading some Jewish and later Protestant scholars to question their theological purity and authenticity. Theological divergences. The books of the Maccabees, especially 2 Maccabees, introduced theological ideas that influenced later Christian doctrine but were less accepted in Jewish and Protestant traditions. For example, resurrection and afterlife. 2 Maccabees emphasizes the belief in the resurrection of the dead, which later became foundational to Christian theology but was less emphasized in early Jewish theology. Prayers for the dead and intercession of saints. The book also discusses praying for the dead, an idea that became central to Catholic teachings on purgatory. This was controversial among reformers like Martin Luther, who viewed the concept as unbiblical. These theological differences made the books of the Maccabees problematic for Protestant reformers, who sought a return to what they saw as a purer, more direct interpretation of Scripture. 3. Political sensitivities. The accounts of rebellion and resistance in the books of the Maccabees may have seemed politically sensitive or even subversive in some historical contexts. The books celebrate Jewish resistance against foreign oppression, which could inspire parallels in other periods of conflict. While this was not a primary reason for their exclusion, certain regimes were wary of promoting stories that celebrated defiance against authority, particularly in times of political unrest or religious reform. 4. Shift in religious identity and historical relevance. After the Maccabean period, Judaism underwent changes that led to a shift in religious focus away from nationalistic and militaristic themes. The later canonization process favored texts that emphasized spiritual, moral, and covenantal themes, de-emphasizing the political and military narratives found in the books of the Maccabees. Christianity, on the other hand, recognized value in the Maccabean books for their martyrdom stories and moral lessons, but they were not foundational for Christian teachings, making them less essential over time. The forbidden status of the Maccabees. The exclusion of the books of the Maccabees from certain canons and their apocryphal status in Protestantism led to their being viewed by some as forbidden knowledge. These books discuss topics that touch on contentious theological issues, such as the afterlife, resurrection, and the legitimacy of prayers for the dead. This created an aura of mystique and controversy, especially among those seeking deeper or alternative biblical knowledge. While the Maccabean books may have been sidelined, they remain important to Catholic and Orthodox Christianity, which view them as authoritative scripture. In Jewish tradition, they hold historical significance, commemorated each year through the celebration of Hanukkah. Meanwhile, many Protestant traditions continue to study the books for their historical insight, even if they are not recognized as canonical scripture. Conclusion. The books of the Maccabees occupy a unique position in biblical literature, valued but not universally accepted as scripture. Their rich historical detail and theological implications provide valuable insights into Jewish resistance and identity during the Hellenistic period and contribute to our understanding of early Jewish and Christian beliefs. Although not banned, the Maccabean books were excluded from certain canons due to their language, theological ideas, and cultural associations, leading to an enduring aura of mystery around them. They are a testament to the complexities of the biblical canon formation and a reminder of the diversity of beliefs within the Judeo-Christian tradition. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.